Welcome everybody, Gianni Football is back with a Halloween edition of Gianni Gameday. This week, we have Oregon taking on USC. Things got a little scary last weekend for the Ducks as they narrowly escaped the loss against Washington State. And same thing goes for the Trojans. They barely beat Colorado and it took a comeback to defeat the Buffaloes. Now things can get pretty spooky this weekend for the Ducks when they have a playoff trip on the line. The Coliseum is going to be rocking this Saturday for a classic Pac-12 matchup. Are you ready? Because Gianni Football is ready to get back out into the stadium for another episode of Gianni Gameday. Gianni Gameday. I've been keeping you waiting for long enough, so it's finally time for another edition of Know Your History. This week, we're going to cover some history between Oregon and USC. Exactly 73 years ago from this Saturday's matchup, November 2nd, 1946, the Oregon Webfoots traveled to the LA Memorial Coliseum to take on the USC Trojans. In that game, the Trojans dominated, winning 43-0. Will we see a similar result? We'll find out this Saturday, November 2nd, 2019. Now it's time for Gianni Football Breakdown for the game between Oregon and USC. As I mentioned earlier, both teams struggled in their last game and narrowly escaped with a win. Oregon needed a last-second field goal to defeat Washington State, and they gave up a lot of points and a lot of yardage to Washington State. Head coach Mario Cristobal said that they struggled with that offense that Washington State runs. That air raid offense confused them, and it's not something that they see every week. Well, guess what? Graham Harrell, offensive coordinator for USC, he is a air raid pro, and he was coached by Washington State's head coach, Mike Leach. So he is going to be running that air raid offense down Oregon's throat this weekend. So they're going to see it yet again, and USC has better athletes than Washington State, so Oregon's going to have to really keep it up, really step it up on defense to try to contain all the great wide receivers that I've talked about in my previous videos with USC, like Michael Pittman Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tyler Vaughns. One of the biggest issues for USC this season has been the injury bug. Last week against Colorado, their three top running backs were out of the game, which caused them to rely on freshman Keenan Christian. Also, 4 of their defensive starters were out of that game, which made Colorado very effective on the offensive side of the ball. We don't know exactly who's going to be back in this game, so that's going to be a really big mystery going into this game against Oregon, who has a very high-powered offense. We all know about quarterback Justin Herbert and how phenomenal he is, but last week against Washington State, it was C.J. Verdell, running back for Oregon, who really had a career game. Over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. USC quarterback Kedon Slovis has had some bright moments this year and led his team to some key victories. However, there's also been some moments where he's shown his immaturity. Now the Oregon defense has had an interception in 14 of the last 17 games, and sophomore safety Javon Holland had a pick 6 in last week's game against Washington State. Now if Kedon Slovis can get his head on straight and lead his team, I believe he can get the upset against Oregon. However, if he shows his freshman immaturity, then Oregon might be playing lights out on Saturday. And now it's time for my prediction. USC is 25-5 since 2015 at home. 8 of those wins were against ranked opponents, and 2 of those wins were against top 10 opponents. And this Saturday, we're going to see a 3rd win against a top 10 opponent. USC will get the upset victory and totally screw up the Pac-12 chances of getting into the playoff, except for maybe Utah, but probably screw up the chances for the Pac-12 of getting into the playoff, but make the Pac-12 championship race very, very interesting. USC is a different team when they play at home, and with that very electrifying, momentum-building victory last week in Boulder, I think USC will carry that into this game and defeat Oregon 34-31. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Gianni Gameday. It's been over a month since I've seen any live college football, so I've been feeling a little delirious. But that's okay, because this weekend, let's go crazy. USC is going to get that upset victory against Oregon, and they're going to party like it's 1999. They're going to be celebrating and living that pop life. And we're finally going to know the sound of when ducks cry. So let's have a great college football Saturday with Gianni Football at this week's episode of Gianni Gameday.